Right. Well, thank you guys so much for having us here tonight. We recognize that this is a very difficult time in just with everything going on in the world. And we had the fires recently, so no one was expecting that. So thank you very much to Oak Grove for recognizing that during the stressful time, it might be nice to connect, to meet, to go over some basic principles of mental wellness and what we can be doing at home to help ourselves and help our students. I'm a school psychologist with Sonoma County Office of Education, and I've been in our county for about 8 or 9 years now. And I help supervise our programs for students who've been impacted by fires and floods.
My name is Sherwood Higgins, and I am a part of the behavioral health team. I'm a school counselor. I do mental health services with students.
My name is Gabriela Gachet, or Gabby Gachet, and I am a mental health recovery counseling specialist as well with Laura and Ryan. I am also a bilingual counselor, so I just wanted to say a couple words for the Spanish-speaking families. Mi nombre es Gabriela Gachet, soy consejera especialista en la recuperación de la salud mental. Trabajo en la Oficina de Educación del Condado de Sonoma y estamos trabajando en otra presentación completamente en español. Pero por favor, hasta mientras, si alguien tiene alguna pregunta, pueden interrumpir a cualquier momento y después también entraremos a cuartos pequeños y también pueden hacer cualquier pregunta ahí. Muchas gracias.
Thanks, Gabby. And then also just some logistics. We want this to be meaningful to you, so please interrupt if you have any questions. You can write your questions in the chat. There's a chat function on Zoom. We'll monitor those and make sure that those questions get addressed. And we'll get started here. Thank you again. So our first slide is thank you. When I've already said that enough, but not enough. I can't say it enough, actually. So thank you so much for all the work that you've done thus far with your students at home. I know this is a challenging time, and taking time out of your evening to listen to us or to replay this on a video just shows that you're interested in trying to figure out the best ways of caring for yourself and caring for others, and we really appreciate that. Today, we're going to go over some basic objectives of self-care and stress management. We'll talk a little bit about trauma-informed responses in children. So what we know as far as the recent disasters and how students are affected, what we can notice at home to help intervene, to help our kids recover in a speedy way. We're going to go over kind of how to model some of the things that we're going to talk about today and ways of taking care of yourself, because we can't really help others until we've helped ourselves. We'll have a little bit of time for conversation, and we'll share lots of resources today. This is what I call the doom and gloom slide. This is all of the things that have been going on in our world. It seems like every time we do this presentation that there's more to add to it. So right now, fortunately, clear skies, not a whole lot of smoke, which is great. But that shifts on a day in and day out basis, it seems. We have COVID-19, so we're learning from home. We're interacting with school and our relationships differently than we ever have before. So it's something just to be mindful of. And while there's this pandemic occurring within COVID-19, there's a dual pandemic in our society with racial injustice. And a lot of people are feeling that they're either left out of the process or are interacting with our systems a little bit differently. And it's very important for us just to be aware of how stressful that may be. It's important to note that our friendships, when we're missing out on friendships, it's, even though we're doing it online a lot and we're connecting with our families and friends online, it's common to feel isolated. And isolation brings up stress and anxiety. So I think that it's important to take care of yourself and to try to make sure that we're thinking about connecting with others during these times. There's a lot of other stuff on here, but really I think just the takeaway is that there's a lot going on and this is a challenging time. And so let's figure out how to take a deep breath and move forward.
The way that our children are responding to all of these things that Ryan just outlined can vary a lot. And just like it does in adults. And the feelings might be ever shifting within minutes even. And so that's something to expect. And the other thing to expect is all of these crises that we've experienced recently are feel. And the changes that you see in your children might last for an extended amount of time. And one of the major takeaways is that there's no normal reaction to loss. There's no normal timeline for recovery. It's going to vary a lot in your child. This slide is a tricky one because it kind of divides responses up into negative and positive, and nothing is that binary, of course. But what we like about this slide is it shows that there's an array of responses that go on with crises and natural disasters. And the same domain, like socially, for example, there can be a really negative side of it, like, social isolation and withdrawal, but sometimes there can be a positive social response as well, like people wanting to connect more and helping behaviors that we see. So there's a lot of positive things that can happen from this too. And the take home is that there's a really wide variety of responses and that there's no right or wrong way to process emotions and traumatic events. So within each age group, you can expect different reactions. One thing that you're going to see a lot is a regression of some sort. But in preschoolers in particular, they're small, and in a lot of ways, they're helpless and powerless in these sorts of big events. They might feel a lot of intense fear and insecurity about being separated from their caregivers at this time. And there's also an issue with grasping the idea of permanent loss. They might think that some things are reversible when they're not. Another thing that you might see a lot in preschoolers is reenacting events that happened or repetitively talking about them. That's a really normal response too. In elementary aged kids, which applies to a lot of you parents out there, I'm sure, these students will have an ability to understand the permanence of loss. So some of your children might become really preoccupied with the details of the traumatic events and want to talk about it continually. Others might withdraw. But either way, it can have an effect on the way that they concentrate in school, how they focus on academic performance. The other thing to mention is that they might experience other feelings like guilt over action or inaction that preschoolers might not, or anger that the event wasn't prevented, or even fantasies about playing like a superhero role. For older children, older children's responses are going to resemble ours a lot more. Sometimes survival of trauma can kind of encourage teenagers to have this immortality sense, which happens anyway, even without disaster. So there might be an uptick in some risky behaviors, such as alcohol use or driving erratically. And other teenagers might react differently, and it's a scary and fear-inducing world out there, and they might be afraid of leaving the home. So again, reactions can be across the board, and they can last a long time.
And here are some risk factors that can create heightened reactions. So some experiences we know through research may lead to more significant responses or amplify the typical reactions. So be aware if your child if your children are going through these things, they might need extra supervision or additional support. So it can include exposure to the actual event. So we know that proximity, it matters. And if a child was directly exposed to the fire versus proactively evacuating, that there might be a more significant impact. We also know that displacement from their home or community can be also a significant factor, and that's happened to a lot of our community over multiple times. So that's something to really be aware of. Also, there was, during the 2017 fires, people didn't have access to medications, but I think recently there's been more of an effort put into notifying people, to have that in their to-go bags. There's also pre-existing risks. So the reality is that if people are struggling in these areas, they could have a more significant reaction. That includes previous traumatic experiences, like our fires that we've had, or floods, mental illness, immigration status, a low socioeconomic status, or financial hardships. Those are just a few of pre-existing risks that may happen. So a small minority of children might be at risk of developing post-traumatic stress disorder, which is just an ongoing state of stress due to a traumatic experience. So this list is some things to look for in others and in yourself. So re-experiencing the disaster, for example, during play or dreams, or anticipating feeling that the disaster is going to happen or happening again. Avoiding reminders of the disaster so they don't want anything that reminds them of it, or also feeling like there's no emotional reaction or numbness to the disasters, and then increased arousal symptoms as well. So for the majority of children, they will heal and return to normal, and they will come back to baseline. So, children have gone through this. And, a stress reaction are normal for children, but healing and recovery is the normal and the expectation. And their behavior can also change with their frequent reminders. So if there's sirens or if there's smoke or they're driving by the damage, they might experience reactions or emotions to that. And those are normal, but if they do last for a prolonged amount of time, that might be something to consider. Additionally, how we respond will help with the healing process as well. So Ryan was mentioning earlier, it's important for us to model the behavior that we want to see in our children as well. There are, however, times when it is appropriate to reach for additional assistance. For example, in relation to baseline, when you observe, of course, as a parent, you have, you're an expert on your child. So when, there are intense feelings of discomfort or significant symptoms persisting longer than 6 weeks. And I just want to talk about the 6-week period, which may be the case for a single event, but we know that our children have gone through compounded crises. So that timeline kind of goes out the window. So you as a parent would know best. Additionally, if they've had suicidal thoughts or there has been planning, here we're also going to put some links to like knowing the signs or what that looks like. So that's why that's underlined there. Other self-destructive or acting out behaviors, and intense family conflicts as well.
Okay, thank you. So this is kind of getting into now, what do we do? How can we help? And we found that both parents and educators benefit from having some specific phrases that might be helpful, that it's sometimes hard to access. What do I say, right? So remain calm and reassuring is really important. It makes it easier to say than to do, of course. But saying things like, we will get through this, or we're gonna do this together, is really powerful. Sorry about my kids making noise in the background. Acknowledge and normalize their feelings, right? So we're gonna paraphrase or reiterate what they're saying, just kind of recognizing what it is that they're feeling, labeling that for them in just a neutral way, and then letting them know that there are no wrong feelings, or that that's okay to feel that way. It's okay to say, this is hard. It's okay to be sad. Encourage children to talk about fire-related or stressful events. And this is kind of a delicate balance, right? So we want to be able to encourage them to express themselves without forcing anything, right? So if we force conversation, sometimes we're not going to get back what we hope to get, and we can only, sometimes it makes it worse, actually. So try to follow your students' lead. And what that means is when they ask you a question, give them a developmentally appropriate answer, the truth, but just at what their question is addressing. We don't have to go into too much detail. Oftentimes they're going to ask a question at a fairly surface level, and that may be all that they're ready to process. So answering that is appropriate, and then let them ask a follow-up question if they want to know more about it. And then encouraging various ways of expression is actually really helpful as well. So allow them to be able to write out their thoughts. So having a pencil and paper handy for them, draw, music, think of other ways that your children express themselves, and provide those opportunities, and maybe a little bit more time for those opportunities immediately after stressful events. We can promote positive coping and problem-solving skills by being flexible, modeling the skills that we hope to see. So taking a deep breath together, for instance, talking about how you cope with stressful situations in a healthy way, reminding them of things that you've noticed they've done before when they're feeling stressed. So going for a walk, playing a game, petting their dog or an animal, right? Emphasize their resilience and the community's resilience. So this is really looking for those helpers in our community and trying to orient your student to the positive things in society, positive things around them, right? There's plenty to highlight. Right? We have firefighters that come in from all over the state. So sometimes it's nice to be able to look for the different fire trucks from different areas and talk about how neat it is that they get to, we get help from everywhere. Or just thinking about even people in your immediate community and family about, them helping people at a local shelter or donating goods or writing cards, things like that, to be able to focus on those that are providing a positive service in our community. Strengthen social bonds and peer supports. So especially for our late elementary through high school students, their peer networks are just as important as we parents are, right? Maybe more so, if we're honest with ourselves. So making sure that there's time for that connection, both to their friends and to other family. It's hard to do that in today's world when we're isolated and maybe zoomed out quite a bit. So think of creative ways of allowing for that connection. And then take care of you. And I cannot emphasize that enough. The more we model taking care of ourselves and self-care, the better off our children and our families are going to be. And we're going to get into actually doing that here shortly. For our special needs students, for those who have disabilities, for instance, or just need more structure, routine, and support, now's a time to focus on that structure and routine. So they may need a little bit more emphasis on that. We may need to anticipate the triggers and cues a little bit more for some students who aren't able to express or seek those or be able to identify what those triggers are for themselves. We've listed a couple social stories here for students to process information related to fires. These were all created after the 2017 fires. They're still valid today. I'm sure there's more out there if you search, but we will provide these slides in a link at the end of this presentation. And we can also send them out to families, and we'll make sure that Oak Grove principals and teachers have access to this as well. And then, we talked about multiple ways of expression. Visuals and hands-on materials are especially important as our choices for our students with special needs. We get some questions about, what about responding in a way that's emotional in front of my children? How much should I express or share? Think about, this being an opportunity for you to be able to label feelings and model coping, right? So if you're able to say, this is really hard for me, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling sad, that can be very positive and powerful for students to be able to see what that looks like for you and then how you choose to cope with that. If you're on the verge of a breakdown, however, or aren't really able to control your own feelings and are worried about losing your control in front of your children or in front of others, that may be a time to notice that you need to take a break and maybe think now about who you might reach out to in your network of family and friends to lean on when you need this help, right? So if you're an educator, what other teachers might be able to help support you by logging into your Zoom classroom, for instance? If you're a parent, who else might you be able to lean on or call if you're feeling like you just need to connect and take a break from your children for a few moments, so you're able to take that deep breath, compose yourself, and be able to re-engage with them in a positive and healthy way. What do I do with my kids who can't stop worrying? This is common during these times, and empower them as much as you can to focus on what they have control over, right? If you can orient them to the present, that they're safe now in the setting with you, that can be really powerful. And then kind of identify, and we have a couple activities, identify the things that they do have control over. That helps empower them a little bit in aspects of what they can do in this moment. And then maybe even identify things they don't have control over, and it's healthier just to let those things go right now because there's nothing else they can do about that. And there's a phrase there you can reference if you need some specific language around that. I'm going to say what not to do. It's important to know that we all are human. We all make mistakes. And as long as you're connecting with your children and communicating with them and keeping open these opportunities and space for shared understanding of what's happening in their world, then you're doing the right thing, right? So forgive yourself if you said any one of these things I'm about to say, but in general, we want to avoid some of these things that might just make things a little bit more challenging for them, right? So forcing children to tell their stories, we've learned is not particularly helpful. It may make that worse, so they may not be ready to process that level of information. So again, follow their lead. We don't need to probe for excessive details. Just kind of take what they're saying at face value and communicate about those feelings there without trying to get too deep. Saying things like everything will be okay when you don't know that, right? They don't know that. Instead, having phrases like "we're safe now," "we're going to do this together," "we'll get through this together," rather than kind of these false promises out in front that might create more anxiety for them. Telling them how they should feel can be not helpful, right? Especially because that doesn't validate how they're feeling in the moment, right? So maybe it makes them feel even worse about what they are feeling. And anything they're feeling is okay. Everyone processes stress differently. Being negative, we've seen this quite a bit about available help. So it's not time to complain about, efficient use of public funds, for instance. Let's just orient them to the positive things that are happening around them. And then making promises you can't keep. Ken touched on that a little bit, but it'll all get back better soon. We don't know, not having a sense of time or ability to know when things are getting better can potentially bring more stress. So no sense in making those promises rather than just saying, yeah, we're doing this together. We'll get through this together, right? We added some discussion starters here, and we don't need to go over these in detail, but sometimes it's helpful just to have phrases that might promote more thinking about processing information. So this could be something you could give them in a piece of paper for journaling, for instance, or if they are wanting to talk about something, hey, let's start a conversation with one of these topics. Hopefully that'll open up the discussion into something that's more rich and meaningful. And then we've listed some activities here for elementary age students. It's good for all students, to be honest, but just having multimodal ways of expression, fun activities that you can do hands-on with your children that can be meaningful and get them thinking about processing the stress that they've been experiencing. Certainly movement, getting up as much as possible. That's true for us too, right? Stuck in front of the computer too much, especially for the classes that they're taking, classes that you're taking, work that you're doing. Try to set timers or just, whenever you can, get up, move about, label that you're doing this because you need to stretch and you need to move your own body. Physical movement often leads to emotional movement as well. So if you're feeling stuck, getting up and moving around can help you feel better. Secondary activities, we included a few here as well. Again, this is good for everyone, but at this level, they may be more engaged in journaling, for instance, or specific gratitude tasks of either writing down 3 things you're grateful for or engaging in communication around that.
This slide is a really accurate description of the way that many of our children and many of us may be feeling throughout our day, moment to moment. Our emotions are ever shifting, and it can feel like a really not fun roller coaster a lot of the time. So, as you look at this slide, you might think to yourself, well, I was feeling this way when I woke up this morning, and by breakfast, I was feeling that way. And then by this presentation, I'm feeling an entirely different way. The impact of stress is really different on everyone, but being on high alert all the time means that the amygdala is firing, and it makes it really difficult for us to access that reasoning portion, the prefrontal cortex of our brains. So we have to take care of ourselves. Ryan was talking about the importance of you taking care of yourself. And we're going to talk a little bit about the ABCs of self-care. It's a mnemonic. It's cheesy, but you can remember it that way, right? So A is for awareness. Just understanding your own thoughts and your feelings and behaviors are a really important first step to take care of yourself. So if you're finding that you're feeling frozen and overwhelmed or in shock, this is the time to practice basic self-care and get yourself back to a place where you feel grounded. On the other hand, if you're feeling okay and ready to help people, this is a sign that you're looking for a return to normalcy and that you're ready to help. So we're actually going to take a moment to do our own self-assessment right now. I want you all to think about, how are you feeling? What is your current stress level at this very moment in time? And on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being like totally stress-free, and 10 being so overwhelmed that you feel like a volcanic explosion is about to happen, what number would you feel? And if you feel comfortable sharing it, we'd love for you to put it in the chat box. This is a really cool way for us to understand how our community and neighbors and friends are feeling. So I'm going to go ahead and put my number in from 1 to 10. It's actually lower than normal right now. And if you feel comfortable sharing, please do. And if not, you can just keep that number in your head. Yeah, so I'm seeing that one person wrote, I'm feeling a 2 now, but during the fires, I was a 9. Me too. So it sounds like you returned to a really comfortable baseline right away. Okay, this is great. So thank you for those of you sharing. We're finding across the board, we do presentations for educators and community alike, and we're finding that many people often are putting above 5 during these times. And you know, thinking back to Ryan's doom and gloom slide, there's little reason to wonder why, right? Okay, so there we are. We've assessed how we feel. Let's talk about balance, B. So maintaining emotional stability is not an easy feat, and it's not all or nothing. So we're not going to feel great when we're dealing with high levels of stress and hard times. But if you feel yourself needing support in one moment, it's okay. And you can recognize that in yourself. And then later you can think about how you might balance it out. Maybe after you put the kids to bed, you can do something that will feel grounding and helpful. But I think it's important for us to recognize that it's natural to feel off balance. And it's also important for us to take steps to get back to balance using positive coping skills and modeling those for our children. C is for connection. We touched on this a little bit before. Social connection is so important. It's looking very different these days than it used to. A lot of us are experiencing Zoom fatigue. A lot of us are going to need to be really creative about the ways that we're connecting with our friends and neighbors. Maybe it means picking up the phone and making a phone call as opposed to doing a video chat. For me right now, it means walking outside with our toddler daughters after dinner and saying hi to all of our neighbors and petting all the dogs and cats. And that's our social interaction, but it's really important right now. So that is the C. And then as far as stress management strategies, for adults, it's the same as for our children. So I want you guys to just, we're thinking about this number that we just put down, and we can all think about this proactive self-care plan that we might have. And that would have 3 parts: dealing with stress in the moment, daily commitments, and lifestyle commitments. So first, in the moment, if you're finding yourself feeling immediately stressed, it's important to have a plan to cope, because in the moment, it's really hard to know what to do. The first thing we have listed here is breathing. Obviously, we all know how to breathe, but since we have to do it anyway, it's a good idea just to do it really well. And you can model this for your children too. Why don't we take a deep breath together right now? If you want, you can place your hands on your belly. And we're going to take an inhalation through our nose that's long and to the count of 4. And then our exhalation is going to be to the count of 6. So it's going to be longer than our inhalation. And as we take our breath, we're going to feel our belly rise as we take a breath in, and our belly fall down as we breathe out. So we're going to do it together. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4, and out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's an example of a deep belly breath. Another thing that we can do is using positive self-talk. Things like, the smoke is going to clear someday. Someday I'm going to be able to take my kids outside. And then grounding activities. This can be as simple as rubbing like your shirt, like a material that's close by, or wiggling your toes in your shoes, doing something that just brings you into the present. The next is a daily commitment to recharge. And these are things like that bring you joy, things that bring you a sense of rejuvenation, like cooking, meditating, reading, exercising, gardening. So really thinking about those things that give you a recharge. And then the last is lifestyle commitments. And these are, if you're a fan of the outdoors, you can plan a camping trip, for example. If you love gardening, you can get your winter garden planted now. It's a good time to take a class at the JC to pursue something that you're interested in online, of course. So these are the sorts of things you can do to sustain yourself and ground yourself long term.
There's also, so we included the Sonoma Rises app in there. If you guys are familiar, great. If not, it's a free app that was created after the 2017 fires, and has lots of helpful reminders about self-care and connection, some mindfulness activities and things like that. It's free, so check it out. If there's other things that you use to cope, then use something different.
I wanted to add one more thing, Ryan. I'm going to include this link to a breathing exercise. There's so many wonderful apps out there that are helpful with both breathing and grounding and centering exercises. But this is just a quick 45-minute. I think it's from the Calm app, and it's just a 45-second breathing exercise, something that you can realistically do for yourself and your kids. Sorry, I'm done.
Thanks. So this is where we want to build in a little bit of time for connection. So don't worry about participating if you're busy and just listening to this in the background. We can create breakout groups, or we could just kind of share if people are more comfortable doing it that way. Breakout groups really allow for a little bit of closer connection between 5 or 6 people. So perhaps we can leave that up to a vote, or if anyone here is feeling strongly one way or the other, please speak now. Yeah, so just find time just like that to connect with people in your life, people that you may know well, people that you don't, and there are lots of opportunities and groups online that are providing a forum for being able to connect. Other ways of distracting yourself is watching things like Some Good News. We had that in one of our slides that I didn't cover, and things that are positive or distracting yourself by observing photos on the link to the San Diego Zoo, for instance, and you go to see what's happening in the bonobo cages. All right, so takeaways from today, really that stress management and self-care is imperative.
Grammar and spelling are important.
Was that me? I hope that wasn't me.
Sorry.
Grammar and spelling are important, and whoever put that out there, I agree, but not as important as taking care of yourself. And for you educators, I'm sorry that I had to say that. It's true. And connecting with your teachers is more important than your grammar and spelling, but it is important to figure out how to do that. Helping the helpers. So finding ways of writing cards to people that are being active and as positive members in your community, or writing a card to your teachers or to the firefighters or first responders can be really powerful. Connecting with others during this time. We said that a lot, and we'd like to reiterate that that's really important. Following your children's lead. Remember, let their questions guide conversations. Give space and time. Be flexible while sustaining routines. So routines are important. It doesn't necessarily mean that we can't be flexible within those supports that we have in our routines. And then how you respond to your children promotes healing. So if you're able to help validate their feelings, label your own feelings, talk about how you're going to cope together, and breathing, self-talk, grounding can be really powerful and helpful. Also talking about those lifestyle choices that you're making that are helpful in making us feel regulated can be important. And then reach out to friends and family or to professionals when extra help is needed. And if you do need extra support, reaching out to your school site, your counselor at your schools is a good first step. And then if they need additional support, we can help them, or they can help you find people in your community.
And just to add to that, here are some resources in 24-hour hotlines. We've included some local mental health resources as well as some national mental health resources as well.
And we like to print this. I recommend, we've done this training quite a few times. People in positions where you might be getting phone calls of people who are in distress might want to print this page out and just have it accessible so you can give people those connections when they need it.
These are resources that SCOE put together on all of these topics: fire, racial injustice, COVID, distance learning, and supporting students during stressful times. These are good links for educators and parents alike, so please explore those. I also wanted to mention that Kara put an excellent resource up for the Monterey Bay Aquarium live cams. We included the link in the chat for the San Diego Zoo cams and an example of some good news.
So please feel free to reach out to us with any additional questions. You can email us at any of these emails here. We can set up a time, certainly, to talk more about this topic in Spanish with Spanish-speaking families. And Gabriela, if you want to reiterate that at the end here, that would be great. But really, thank you so much for being here, for taking the time out of your day to focus on these things. And we want to make sure that you know there's lots of us here who want to help you get through these stressful times.
Y otra vez para nuestras familias que hablan español, mi nombre es Gabriela Gachet, aquí está mi correo electrónico, se pueden comunicar conmigo por este correo y también queremos tener otra reunión en español para las familias que hablan español también. Gracias.
That's it. Any other questions? Now's a good time to address any. I know that we are running close to time, but we have a few minutes. So please either go ahead and type some questions into the chat box if you have any, or speak out.
I had a question from Erin, who wants to know how best to coordinate more parent connections at Willowside and to get kids to connect as well. And that might be something for principals to answer.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. You know, we're really looking at how we can do this virtually, and Charity, I think she's still here, through OJEP. You know, I have to keep confidentiality with parent emails, but I sent an email out saying, hey, if anybody wants to connect, here's a way. And then we want to continue doing nights like this. So if anybody has good ideas, you know, Ryan or Laura, or Gabi, of things that other schools are doing, how do we connect parents in a virtual environment while honoring confidentiality of parent emails and things like that? So that's what we're trying to figure out.
Thank you, Erin, for asking that, and thank you so much, Lindsay, for answering. And we found that doing this more often, having, this was a fairly structured event with some slides that we got some information from. Maybe in the future, you could do something similar, either have us or somebody else present, or just do it yourselves. And we found that the most meaningful time is usually that breakout time. So maybe just making it around connection and breakout, where you're sharing something that's working for you, something that's not, and really kind of facilitating a little bit of a discussion, and then opportunity for parents more time for parents to connect in their own way as well.
And there are some schools that do distribute some sort of directories. I'm sure that there's a lot of issues around privacy for that, but if you were to get permission from parents, that might be a future project. I think it's difficult right now to focus on administrative tasks like that because there's so much to juggle as educators, but I think that would be a valuable resource if in the future for parents, if that's something that parents would be willing to do.
And for everyone, especially, if you're able to watch this in your own time, or anyone that that might benefit from this, this logging in and participating like this can feel just like one more really heavy thing to have to do. And really hard to do when you're feeling overwhelmed. So making it as, what's the word I'm looking for? Not as, as unloaded as possible. Really just come and relax with us, make it a casual, fun experience. I think that's what we as parents are hoping here, is just for a connection in a positive way around a community that we're forming. Without much forced participation or things like that. So I hope that you're able to get something along those lines out of this presentation today, and that you're able to find those opportunities moving forward. I see another question here. Can the sports teams get together and meet on Zoom for conditioning together remotely? What a cool idea. Yeah, I don't know if I know the answer to that, but I love the thought behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is an interesting idea. Technically, we don't have our sports teams right now at Willowside. Athletics is on pause as per the county like our athletic league that we belong to. And I know, Miss Anderson's working on some social clubs for kids, and we have our optional electives, trying to get different things that students are into, but working with leadership too of what ideas do they have. And maybe athletics is a great way to go. So thank you for that suggestion.
And I see that we're just over time. I really want to respect your guys' time today. Thank you so much. I will stick around for a couple more minutes as people close out if there's any additional questions. But thank you again for being here, and thank you, Oak Grove, for providing this opportunity for your parents and for us to all connect.
Yes, thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, go ahead, Lindsay.
Oh no, truly. I was just going to say thank you. Really, truly. You've been here for us since the last 3 years especially, and I know that it's challenging work and important work, and I just always find you're so clear and you make me feel really calm. So thank you.
Thank you for saying that. You're too kind.
Well, thank you everyone for attending, and thank you again, Ryan, Laura, and Gabi. We really appreciate you taking your time to be here with us.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. All right, everyone. Take care and have a lovely evening.